Hello there, my name is Sixo, but more on that later, as now it's time for a brand new unboxing video. And today is a bit of a momentous occasion, as we're about to complete the set of Ocular Max Combaticons, meaning two things. One, I'll finally be able to assemble the full Assaultus combined mode, something I'm very much looking forward to. And two, I won't need to remember this team's third-party names anymore. I mean, look, I remember that you've got Assaultus, Incursus, Impetus, Velatus, Probus, Fraudo, Frodo, Bilbo, Fido, Hobo, Condo, Speedo, Hairdo, Invictus, Diplodocus, Autofocus, Abacus, Mucus, Staphylococcosaurus, Dave D, Dozy, Beaky, Mick and Titch. Wait, are some of those real? I'm so confused. Anyway, this is the last of the bunch. It's Ocular Max Probus. Let's get to it. PS-17 Probus is the final part of the Ocular Max Combaticon team and represents the hulking, bad-tempered tank known as Brawl. If anything, this is a case of last but not least, as honestly I think this is the figure in the set that I've been most looking forward to. Let's hope he doesn't disappoint. Of course, Probus also forms part of the full team combined mode, known as Assaultus, with the big draw here being that these toys feature an all-in-one transformation with no parts forming whatsoever. Bits such as hands and feet and all of the other stuff you might normally associate with a combined mode of this kind are all built into the toys themselves. It's been great fun checking out the toys so far, and I can't wait to see how Probus measures up to the rest of the team. Now, we've previously seen the Combaticons done many times over, although arguably one of the first true Masterpiece-styled attempts was from Unique Toys a few years back, with their individual figures and the combined mode all packing quite the punch. Then there's the much-lauded Zeta Toys set, which is a true behemoth in its combined form, standing at an impressive 50 centimeters tall. It's kind of the opposite to the Ocular Max crew, in that it relies heavily on parts forming and a number of fake parts to achieve the end result. So, there's plenty of room still on the table for Ocular Max to bring their own spin, and based on what I've seen so far, I cannot wait to complete the full lineup today. That's especially true as they seem to be doing a generally fine job at representing the Combaticons as we know them from the original Sumbo cartoon, something that should be even more evident with the full team assembled. Last thing before we begin, today's video comes courtesy of TF Source, so I'll put a link to their site in the video description. The plan for today is to give you my first impressions, and I'll be aiming to get a photo review up on their blog ASAP. Okay, and here is Probus in his packaging, and as with all of the other boxes, it looks really cool. Really love it. I mentioned last time in Velatus's review, see I can remember some of these names, I mentioned that there was a bit of a variation in some of the packaging with the window packaging, like this one, being specifically for the Western market, and some of you have seen that there is a sort of a non-window variant, where actually the toys are packaged in robot mode as well, and that is specifically for the Asian market. And a really interesting kind of situation that's caused a lot of comment online. I've seen a lot of people speculating about why the difference is. I didn't mention actually last time, but apparently with Velatus specifically, that only came in the one box, the non-window box, and then they've reverted to the two styles with Probus here, so you might get one or the other. I have the window box, of course, which personally is my preference. It's very nice packaging either way, though. So you've got, obviously, the character here looking absolutely fantastic. Really love this character design, by the way. I know I mentioned already that this is one of the ones, well, this is the one I'm most looking forward to, this toy specifically. And I really think that that's because that character design, I just don't think it's been nailed in quite the way that I think this toy seems to have done so far. I don't think any of the other third-party sets, whatever, have quite nailed Brawl, the character. And so I'm really excited about this one. That's all I'll say for now. Coming around to the back of the box, and it's the usual fare. If you've seen the other 4 videos that I've done on this set, you'll be very familiar by now. You've got the toy transforming just here. You've got the sort of sneak peek of the combined mode. You've got the tech spec, which is again a throwback to the Generation 1 days. If you're not familiar with G1 packaging, you always get these little tech specs with the bio, and then this bit, which is kind of telling you all about their different abilities and giving them a score for their strength and intelligence and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it looks really, really cool. Gonna take a moment to just again highlight this wonderful packaging art on here because I really love it. Honestly, that head sculpt, the way that it's drawn, that is perfect to me. Love it. All right, well, no sense hanging about. Let's get this guy open. There we go. Well, that's the contents of the box, so let's get it all unpacked and see what's in there. Of course, we have the toy itself in the clamshell, so that's the bit that I'm really excited about. We'll check that out in just a second. Of course, we have this little bag with the instructions just here, and also some additional instructions. Quite interesting, this one, because it's the final piece in the set. It actually includes some, well, at least one additional piece for helping with the combined mode. We'll talk a bit more about that later, but these instructions here just tell you how to swap out that piece, so we'll go through that in good time. And of course, there's also the tech spec reader in here, which is a reference to that bit on the back of the box that I already mentioned. That's what helps you to see those stats. Oh, and I didn't mention, but there's a character card as well, if that's your thing. In terms of accessories, you've got these 2 sizable cannons, which look really, really nice. A little bit of paint just on the top there. And yeah, 2 of those. You've got this smaller rifle accessory, which looks very military-esque. You've got this additional piece, this kind of blocky piece, which is the mount for those 2 larger cannons. And you've got these 2 little pieces, which are little antenna for the tank mode. One of them's slightly bent on mine, but they are sort of pliable plastic, so I'm sure it's fine. And then, as I mentioned, there is this additional piece as well, which is specifically for the combined mode. So this is actually a replacement ratchet joint for the shoulder. Obviously, it goes into Incursus, which is the team leader, the Onslaught. But actually it's going to help you with the combined mode shoulders. Now, it will require some taking apart and swapping things out, so I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to do that in the separate video that we'll do on the full combined mode, so something to look forward to, eh? And then here's something I definitely was not expecting, but it also includes another additional head for Fraudo, their Swindle. And it's a strange one because it's actually very similar, I mean almost identical, to the smirking face that I got in the box. I'm guessing maybe some people didn't get that head or whatever else, so they've included it with Probus as well, just to keep people happy. But there you go, it is in there. And there you can see just a quick comparison of the 2 heads. And as I mentioned, they are really very similar indeed. Slightly different moulding on the face specifically. Hard to say which I prefer, actually. I'm pretty happy with the one that's on him currently, that's in place, so maybe I'll just go ahead and leave that on there. But hey, there's an option for you. If you feel particularly strongly one way or the other, then yeah, that new head is included in with Probus. And then here's everything you get in the package, including the toy itself, which of course needs a bit of assembly still, all of his various accessories, including his weapons and all of that lot, paperwork, and then these additional pieces, which are for some of the other figures in this set. Right, well, let's talk about Probus. And of course, this is not what the vehicle mode is supposed to look like. We're going to need to rearrange that turret a little bit, so let's take a look. Well, they don't actually cover this bit of reassembly in the instructions, but it does mention that if you press this button just here, you should be able to lift the turret up, like so, and then that quite clearly enables you to rotate it round. It's quite stiff. And then I guess if you, yeah, there we go, press it again and it just goes back down. So yeah, that's already looking a bit more like it's supposed to. Let's get some of those other weapons on there too. Well, quite clearly the first thing you're going to want to do is to put together these cannons with the rear mount, which just squeeze in like so. That's quite tight, but yeah, feels good. And then that's going to peg just on the rear of the tank, just here. There we go. And then you've got these 2 green tabs on the side, so they just kind of fold down and plug into place like so. There we go. A little bit fiddly, but yeah, it does a great job of filling in the back end of this vehicle mode, and it covers what is probably the only bit of kibble that you're going to find on this tank mode, actually. So if you don't have this piece in place, you are going to see a bit of the feet, a bit of a gap just there at the top, but with it in place, it's completely flush. Sadly, I didn't realise this quite straight away, so you will see some other shots in this video just coming up where actually these little bits here are not folded down, but this is how it's supposed to be. So that's how it's supposed to look, and it does look really, really nice. It's got a nice little moulded kind of detail just on there as well. So really nice touch. I like how they've kind of solved that. Then you can go ahead and put the rifle onto the top of the main turret, just like that. That just pegs in place, feels very secure. And finally, you've got these two little antenna pieces, which just peg in or clip in on the top like that. I know some people don't like, well, this kind of, I mean, you could call it parts forming or whatever else, but I think it's probably a good thing that these are removable. And as I mentioned before, they're kind of this like very sort of soft, very soft, pliable plastic, which again, I'm sure is appreciated because they're very thin. And if that was hard plastic, that would get snapped way too easily. So for me, I don't know, it already feels like they're the kind of thing that could get lost very easily. I keep all of my accessories in little bags just for that very reason, because otherwise they just end up everywhere. But they do kind of, add a little something to the tank mode, as we'll see. And here is Probus in his fully assembled vehicle mode. And my word, it looks great. It really, really does look great. Honestly, I know I've said it a couple of times already and in a short space of time, and this has been the one that I've been most looking forward to. I mean, look, tank transformers, they're 10 a penny nowadays, right? I mean, God, how many tank Megatrons are there alone, let alone every other tank former that you can think of. But that said, this is definitely one of the nicest ones I've seen. Just right off the bat, it really impresses me. Honestly, the tank form just looks superb. Really, really superb. Love the colour, really love the green that they've gone for. Quite different to the other third-party brawls, as we'll see when we do a few comparisons later. But yeah, it's much more of this kind of like slightly, I don't know, how would you describe it? Pea green, leaf green? My wife would be brilliant at this. She'd be able to tell you the exact hue of this thing. And I'm just like, it's green. But yeah, I do really like it all the same. But yeah, I just think it looks awesome. It looks very military-esque and quite, I don't know, I want to say it looks real world, but I'm not an expert, right? Like, just, that's a massive caveat on my part. I know nothing about tanks. I know, to me it looks real world because it's got lots of detail and molded pieces and whatever else. But I could just be talking nonsense, so feel free to correct me in the comments if that's not the case, of course. I guess maybe these rear cannons might be a little bit outlandish. Who can say? Well, I'm sure someone can, but not me, certainly. But it does look great. That's what I'll say. It looks great. And I do think a big part of that is just how nicely molded the thing is. It's actually quite an interesting combination of lots of detail, but it's not overdone in any way. I mean, there are a number of kind of smoother areas, particularly on the top here. It's not aggressively greebly or anything like that, which I think sometimes these kind of tank modes can be. They just kind of load it with too much detail or whatever else. And this is kind of a nice combination, actually, of there is good detail, particularly along the side here, nice molding, but they haven't overdone it. They haven't overdone it. It's a nice balance. It's a good balance. That's probably what I would say about it. I am absolutely living for all the accessories on here, though. Honestly, I mean, maybe I could have taken a look at it without them first, but really, it just completes the look. I mean, this rifle on here, these cannons at the back, that is how I think of Brawl, from his animation model, whatever else. And that is something that really they've absolutely nailed in a way that I don't think I've seen that on any of the other kind of third party or any of the other versions so far. It just feels like the animation model to a really great degree. And it looks awesome as well. He's absolutely loaded, ready for battle, and just looks cool. Okay, well, let's take a look at some of this detail a little bit closer, shall we? Because there's a lot to talk about, actually. I mean, firstly, I just noticed on this little section here, I love that they've done like a little bit of paint application just there. I mean, that's a tiny, tiny little touch, but very appreciated because, I don't know, I guess you can kind of get a bit lost in a kind of sea of green otherwise, but just those little touches make it, it's a big deal. It's really appreciated. And even stuff like this little button here, which is the button that we already saw that helps to turn the turret, or pull the turret up and turn it around. It kind of looks like it's purposeful and it's meant to be there because of how they've put a bit of molding on it. So again, nice attention to detail by Ocular Max in that regard. You know, they've really thought through this stuff and kind of gone into the granular detail, so that's cool. It's also worth mentioning that these little hatches can actually fold up as well, so they do open just like that, which again is a small little detail, but how cool is that? I mean, there's no real world interior or anything like that, but still, the fact that they've done that, it's a little touch, but you know, it's nice. It's really, really cool. Just I've removed the rifle there to allow access to that one, but still, it looks great. Really like these additional black plastic sections just on the side there. They look really cool, and again, it's just that extra little bit of detail that really makes it. There are these little wing mirrors just on the sides of the tank, and they look really cool. I didn't expect wing mirrors on a tank, but I guess that makes sense. I mean, I guess you got to park, right? If you're doing your supermarket run or whatever else, I don't know. But yeah, there they are. And yeah, again, with a little bit of silver paint just on the inside. So that attention to detail is just carrying through. Here you can see that molded detail on the rear section just above the wheels, and then at the back here as well. It looks really cool. You know, even this rear section, which, you know, can be a bit forgotten about on some vehicle mode Transformers, but this looks great. Tiny little paint applications for the rear lights. All of this nice painted detail here as well, including a little cross section here. It's very minute. I mean, this is it's not a small toy by any means, but certainly this section is quite tiny, and they've really gone to town on it. Love it. I mean, again, just look at how nice these tank treads look as well. I mean, they're non-moving, obviously, and that's fine. There are little wheels on the bottom to help him roll, but they just look gorgeous. Nice silver paint, really well applied, very crisp detailing, looks good. Even the underside, I mean, how clean is that? There's literally no kibble anywhere. I'm excessively impressed at this point. Honestly, I'm going to rave about this thing because it's quickly shaping up to be my favorite, I think. I will say that one of my two antennae is still slightly bent, so that's a little bit annoying. I'm hoping that it'll maybe kind of, you know, straighten out in time. I might need to, I don't know, put some books on it or something. But hey, not a big deal. Well, here's a weird one for you. I hadn't actually perceived this from photos at all, but they've included this kind of, this almost like fabric molding on there. Just this is the joint between the turret and the kind of main barrel, and yeah, I really like it. It looks great. They've kind of made it look very much like this is a kind of fabric piece that would be, you know, moving or whatever else. And if I just adjust the cannon there, you can see what it looks like, and yeah, lovely, really nice. Additionally, this rifle piece does move up and down as well. As you can see, it's actually a little hinge built into the rifle itself, and a nice little bit of additional posability for the tank mode there. And of course, I nearly forgot to mention this, but you can indeed turn the turret as well. It turns quite freely, like so, and of course will go all the way around if you really, really want it to. But it's on quite a tight ratchet joint, as I'm sure you can hear. But yeah, that's it does exactly what you would want it to do. And as I've already alluded to, of course, you can move the big cannon up and down as well. So there really is quite a lot of posing that can be done with this tank. So overall, I've got to be honest, I love this tank mode. I absolutely adore it. I just think it's so good to look at, and it's functional as well. You know, there's a lot of play value involved here. It's got the looks, it's got the charm, it's got the play value. What more can you want? You know what I mean? It's just a great looking toy that handles really nicely. The plastic feels good. You know, we've had some nitpicks along the way with this Ocular Max set. Overall, it's been a blast. Don't get me wrong, it has been really, really good. But there have been a couple of nitpicks if you've watched the other videos. But really, with this vehicle mode, they have absolutely nailed it. Even if you're just after a nice brawl in tank mode, this is the one to beat, definitely. And truthfully, that's not me blowing smoke. Do you know what I mean? If you watch my other videos, you'll see I was a little bit underwhelmed by Volatus, for example. But honestly here, this is just great. Really, this is what I came to the party for, truthfully and honestly. It's just brilliant. Right, well, it's time to do a few quick vehicle mode comparisons. So firstly, we'll take a look at him with Masterpiece Sideswipe and Fans Toys June Runner, or June Rider if you prefer, whichever one. And there you go, you can see him against an official car bot and how he scales up, and against another third-party product, a bit smaller. Yeah, and he's a sizable chap. I mean, obviously if it was a real world tank, it would be a lot larger, no doubt, but As I often mention, you know, real-world vehicle mode scale, not a thing as far as Masterpiece or third-party Masterpiece Transformers go. But there you can see what they look like anyway. But let's go for something a little bit larger now, and here is Make Toys Endgame, which of course is their Dirge. And yeah, you can see how he looks with it's Masterpiece Seeker size. Obviously it's third party, but it's the same size. And that looks pretty good to me. Again, you know, real world vehicle mode scale. Vehicle mode scale is not a thing, but at least you can see what they look like together. Well, let's check him out with another tank mode transformer. And here is KFC Ditka, which honestly, you know, until this point, I think I probably would have cited, it's about like that, but probably would have cited this as one of my favorite tank modes because of, you know, just how nice it is and whatever else. And it does have some kibble like at the back there with the jets and what have you. Not a perfect toy by any means this. Don't think that I said that because I did not. But the tank mode is really, really nice, at least. But you know what? Has to be said that Probus just crushes it, absolutely crushes it. I mean, this is still really nice, well put together, but there are compromises with the tank mode, fair to say. And you know, in many ways, these are both triple changes as well, because of course this thing has to become an arm. So it's a very fair comparison, I think. But definitely this guy takes it for me. Might be, I'm saying it lightly because I don't want to, you know, I don't want to forget anything, but it might be my favorite third-party or Masterpiece styled tank that we've had so far. I really do think it's that good. Well, anyway, it's time to get this guy transformed up into his robot mode. So this is transformation 1 of 2. Can't wait to see how it goes. Okay, and there he is in his robot form. And well, that was a fun process. I really enjoyed that. Not complicated at all. A couple of real clever touches as well. There's a use of buttons on areas such as the legs in order to be able to extend those down, which I don't know, I always kind of enjoy. It always makes me feel like I'm getting a good bang for my buck if I've got a button to press, you know. Yeah, overall, he cleans up really, really well. Everything tabs together beautifully. The arms is an interesting one. You know, you may have seen just there the way it kind of contorts and comes together. Quite simple, really, but that's the kind of design that I like, in that the execution is clever, but it's still simple and fun to execute. That for me is a kind of winning combination, you know, versus some of the sort of over-engineered stuff that you get. And I think they've done this beautifully. To me, that's not a complicated transformation at all, and the result speaks for itself. It's just beautiful. So, confession time. I wasn't initially convinced on the Ocular Max set, okay? So like when I first saw photos of them, I was like, yeah, no, they look nice, but I could probably live without that, right? Like I've already got the Unique Toys set and I've got Zeta for combined mode, and I don't know, I didn't feel like there was quite enough that really grabbed me and made me want to give it a go, other than maybe the all-in-one transformation, which I did think was super interesting, and I was keen to check that out. And then I saw photos of this guy, and that was the deal breaker for me. I think that was the moment where I went, yeah, I just need to see this thing in hand. I mean, look, it's been interesting because, of course, then it was the final figure to be released, and so I've had to wait. But well, not too long really, but still all the same. And then, you know, actually it's been good because I've got to appreciate the other 4 toys before checking this guy out. But still, this for me is the peak of it. This is the one where I'm like, wow. Do you know what I mean? Straight off the bat, I love it. You know, I'll check it out now, and of course I'll be discerning and whatever else, but my first impression is this is exactly what I wanted from a Masterpiece style Brawl. It just nails it, nails the character, nails the look. The general vibe of this guy is just spot on. You know, I've no wish to gush on and on and on, but it really is just superb. Look at that face sculpt, just look at it. This is just awesome. It's more than just the nice design of the toy though. There's just like there's a real vibe of the character here. There's just something that screams Brawl to me. It just captures the animation really well, looks great. I'm just really bowled over, to be honest, and there's so many nice details about it as well. There's just a lot to appreciate. It's honestly one of those that I'm glad that I got to transform it into robot mode. I think if you take this guy out of the package in robot mode, you'll still be amazed, like you'll be impressed. But I mean, look, it's fun either way, isn't it? It's a real joy to behold. Yeah, you know, and a large part of that is this face sculpt, which I just think is spot on. Love it. They've totally nailed it. The colours are excellent. The design is nigh on perfect. I mean, genuinely, if I never have another third-party or official Masterpiece style Brawl in my collection, this for me is the one that has totally just nailed the sculpt, honestly. That red on the mouth plate is just perfect, absolutely perfect. It looks perfect. You know, again, with the tiny little paint applications here and there that just really add something. These little yellow lights either side of the head sculpt, it's such a tiny little thing, and yet it makes a real difference. It just elevates this guy overall. Some nice sculpting and painted detail on the chest just there, with this little circle, quite reminiscent of the cartoon as well. Dig that. Arms are an interesting one, as they feature a lot of the kind of inside molded section from the treads all kind of then mangled up. It actually looks kind of cool. I mean, it's not the cleanest, I will say, but I don't mind it. Fair dose of molded and painted detail, you know, in areas such as this, the front of these legs here, which is carried over from the alt mode, of course. Even on the feet, that looks superb. But actually, even you know, even over here on the inside, in an area that you wouldn't necessarily think of, they have included more paint, more details. It looks superb. Really like it. As far as the back of him goes, of course, it's mainly just the old tank turret there hanging off like a backpack. But I really don't mind that because that is the character design. So, you know, if you think that's Ghibli, then I guess I guess this is just not the toy that you wanted. But for me, that's exactly where it should be. Now, I have removed the two little antennae. In the instructions, they actually show to leave them on, but I really didn't fancy them poking out the back. Just there. I mean, so you can leave them on if you want. They don't need to be taken off at all. But of course, I'd just rather they not get damaged in any way or whatever else. And even then, I just think it looks cleaner without them. I guess if you really wanted to, you could even leave the gun, the turret pegged in there for a bit of weapon storage as well. So that's, options. And then a small but very neat touch, they've even included these little kind of gun sections just here, these little cannon sections, which are just on the sides of his chest. And that is a detail from the animation model that is quite representative of the character. I think these sorts of little touches are important to me because you can have the obvious stuff like a vaguely reminiscent face sculpt, the colors and kind of the vague details being in the right place, like the turret on his back, whatever. But then it's when you get down to this kind of little granular detail that it starts to make a difference in terms of bringing the animation model to life. And Ocular Max, I think, really understand this in a way that some of the other third-party brawls haven't quite gone that far, and this is exactly what I'm talking about in that regard. So yeah, just overall, I'm really quite blown away actually with how great he looks, how clean he is, how, I don't know, kind of fun to handle he is right off the bat. I'm just sort of a bit blown away. I think they've done an excellent job with it. So anyway, let's check out some of the accessories and articulation and all that kind of stuff. Well, the head is on a ball joint, so has a very decent range of articulation, including the ability to look up and down, side to side. Shoulders have a decent range, slightly impeded at that angle, just because of these huge sort of shoulder pads here, and then up like that as well, so double jointed shoulders. Nice bicep swivel just there, and just a little tiny touch over 90 degrees at the elbow. Hands look great. I mentioned this in a couple of the other reviews for this set, but they got this kind of nice curved quality to them, that just give it a little bit more life. But also all of the fingers are on individual Joints at the knuckle, they're all just molded like that, though you can't actually articulate the fingers themselves, but they do all move independently. And then the thumb is on a ball joint. Oh, and there's a bit of wrist swivel as well. Then there's a very decent waist swivel as well. That's quite freely moving. And then I didn't expect this, but ab crunch, baby. In terms of the hips, you got the old hip flap solution. Someone said recently that I talk about hip flaps a lot, and I clearly have a bit of a thing about it. I guess maybe that's true. Here, actually, I don't mind them too much. They're fairly clean and inoffensive, so I'm not going to grumble too much. And you get a good 90 degrees at the hips just there as well, and of course out to the side. And they seem like they're on some nice ratchets too. The knees are a bit of a weird one, as they've actually got this small tab just at the back there that initially I thought just kind of didn't really have anywhere to go, but actually what you have to do is peg it just there, very far in, and then make sure that the knee is tabbed into the front just here as well. Otherwise the whole thing feels very loose. It's not particularly explained very well in the instructions, hence it took me a kind of second to figure it out. But once you get it right, actually the knees do feel very secure, and you can, well, he says that actually it's just come untabbed slightly, but you can, if you can get it right, get a 90-degree bend out of them. You just need to be maybe a little bit careful it doesn't come untabbed, that's all. And then you've got these big old clompers here, which have some ankle tilt, not much actually. I expected maybe a bit more. That's about all you're going to get out the ankle tilt. And then there is kind of, toe articulation as well, if indeed that is useful to you. Right, let's get his gun in his hand, shall we? So you just flip this little handle out like so. Then you can go ahead and just pop the gun into his hand. And there's this little peg mechanism, you can see it just there, that actually goes into the sort of base of the hand itself instead of kind of into the palm, and then wrap the fingers around like so. And it's an interesting one, because I was just saying in my review of Fans Hobby Machine Eagle just the other day how they have this kind of slider mechanism, which is kind of where the gun slides into the hand and pegs in very securely. That always feels quite unique to them. But actually I think this is just as good, maybe even better. I don't know. It's very secure. I really like how easy it is to execute, and it's certainly better than the sort of more traditional peg in palm method, I think. Anyway, all of that articulation means that he's very, very poseable overall, and he just looks terrific. Honestly, love it. There is no question this is my favorite of the set. I can say that honestly. I just think they've absolutely crushed it with this guy. He's fun to pose, fun to play with, looks fantastic, transforms well, the alt mode is superb. I've got very few nitpicks at this stage. Do you know what I mean? I could really try and think of something, I'm sure, and get creative with it. But just genuinely, he's a fun old toy. And it's great to see because, if you've watched my Velatus video, their blast off, you'll know that I was a little bit underwhelmed with that guy, to be completely honest. I said at the time that in the context of the wider set, I feel like it's, it was still going to be worth it, and that it, as a team of 5, it would all come together. And really, this guy just solidifies that for me. Do you know what I mean? Yes, Velatus is weaker, or the weakest of the set, but overall, when you've got figures as good as this, it's a triumph. Do you know what I mean? You have to look at all 5 of them, which we will do, of course, in a second, and just think, yeah, they've really achieved something here. It's glorious. That said, if you just want a really decent, great-looking Masterpiece style brawl, then, sod the rest of the set and just consider getting this guy anyway, because he really is that good. I just think that in this one toy, they've just really outdone themselves. I do like the rest of the set a lot. Do you know what I mean? As you will know if you've seen my other videos. But this is the crowning achievement so far for me, the best of all of them, definitely. And yeah, there are some quirks. I do wish that there was maybe a bit more give in some of the articulation, such as the ankle tilt or whatever. But honestly, the sum of it all is just a lot of fun. And there's still more fun to be had, because actually you can attach this rear-mounted cannon section to his back as well. So first thing you need to do is just pull out the turret on his back and rotate that round like so. Then you just want to flip this little panel up like that. And then you're just going to peg it on the inside just here. And it is a little bit of a tight fit, but once it goes, it feels quite secure, like so. And then just pull this whole turret section back up and push it back in like that. And then you can see how it looks here with it kind of mounted above his head. You can actually have the turret section further back down so that this is sort of behind his head, if that's what you prefer. And actually some of the official product photography that I've seen of this toy has it done like that, but this is how the instructions show it anyway, so it's completely up to you. It looks fine. It's a little bit silly, but it's a nice inclusion all the same. So I mean, it's quite funny, obviously, for obvious reasons, perhaps, which I'm sure people will have a bit of a laugh with. But overall, it's you know, it's a fun thing that they included. So cool. Right, well, let's go ahead and do a few comparisons anyway. And here he is with MP36 Masterpiece Megatron, and we'll bring in a Starscream. This is Make Toys Meteor, so third party, but still very much Masterpiece styled. And interesting to see, because I think he slots in really nicely with these two. And the one thing that is very noticeable is how tall he is, because he's noticeably taller than Meteor at head height, so well above Seeker size. And I mean, he's not too far off Megatron, actually, if you look kind of closely. And it's been really interesting to see with this Ocular Max set how much the height varies from one to the next. And I think that's one thing that they've really captured quite nicely about this Combaticon lineup. Certainly, I think this works supremely well. And then we've got a couple more Masterpiece Decepticons. So we've got Soundwave, and let's bring in Shockwave, who of course has quite a few memorable scenes with this guy in the animation, or the Combaticons in general, I should say. But yeah, again, I think he slots in really well. I do think that Ocular Max as well have nailed the cartoony look with these guys, and maybe actually this guy especially. I think there's a kind of simplicity and a cleanness to it. I think the proportions, which I haven't really talked about the proportions too much actually, but that was something that on some of the other toys I really did kind of question, whereas actually here, it just works. He looks very cartoony. That is animation, Brawl, and he slots in well with official Masterpiece toys, definitely. I mean, just as another example, here is Masterpiece Optimus Prime, that's MP44, and we'll bring in a couple of Carbots as well. Here is Masterpiece Wheeljack and Sunstreaker. And there you go, you can see again the size of him, not too far off MP44, same height as MP10. And absolutely dwarfing the Carbots, so he's a real kind of physical presence, which is great. Just what I want from this character. Even with some of the larger Masterpiece Carbots, if indeed you consider these Carbots, I do personally, they're part of that kind of range. Here you've got Inferno and Ironhide, and you can see that actually Probus is taller than both of them. So there you go, interesting to see. Now let's check him up in a bit of a futuristic lineup. Here is Fans Toys Sovereign, their Galvatron. Guarantee that every time you show off this toy, someone is like, oh man, that Galvatron, it's so good. And yeah, it is nice looking, certainly. And then we've got X-Transbots, Andras, their Scourge. I think that figure's very nice looking too, personally. Can't wait for the new version that's coming out. And again, you can just see the size of Probus, how well he fits in. He's one of those characters that needs to slot in nicely into a kind of 80s lineup and a 2005-2006 crew, and I think they've done it well here. But what about versus some other third-party combiner limbs? Well, here he is with the Fans Toys Stunticons. The two car guys so far. So we've got Magnum and Spoiler from Fans Toys, and it's interesting because these are tall robots. These are, for Stunticons especially, these are two tall guys, and actually they comparatively are a little bit smaller than Probus. So he really is, as I say, he's a big dude. But let's try for a few more Stunticons now, and here is a couple of X-Transbots team members. There we go. There's their drag strip and their dead end. Here we go with the third-party names. My mind's gone blank. Overheat and Death Wish. There you go. I knew I'd get it. But yeah, they look great. I think, see, for me, this is what works. I will say, just on a quick note about these X-Transbots guys, this is what I like about it, because to me, I like that height differential. I like my Stunticons slightly smaller. I like guys like Probus being a bit bigger. That's for me, that's part of the interest of Masterpiece kind of, style and scale and whatever else. So to my eye, that works wonderfully. But where would we be if we didn't check him out versus some of the other Ocular Max team, eh? So we're going to bring in First of all, Team Leader in Cursus. Then we've got Fraudo. Let's plonk him on the end there. Then we've got Volatus. And we also have Impetus. There we go. That's the full team all assembled. And, well, it's quite the sight to behold, isn't it? It's fair to say. I mean, right off the bat, I have to comment, they look terrific together. They really, really, really do look just wonderful. All credit to Ocular Max. I mentioned it earlier and I said, you know, there have been nitpicks along the way with this set. It's not perfect, if such a thing does indeed exist, but overall, they have crushed it. I'm really, really impressed on the whole. And again, I do think, and I will say it for clarity, this guy is the best. In my personal opinion, this guy is the best. The kind of crowning achievement, if you will. Up until now, I think I've been most impressed overall with Incursus, despite the fact that he has some very weird proportions and his legs are a little bit, you know, not quite as long as they should be. I've still been super impressed with him. You know, as I mentioned, and I've already indicated in this review, you know, I was a little bit underwhelmed with Volatus here, and the other two are really good as well. But overall, as a set, this is just wonderful, wonderful work from Ocular Max. I'm super excited to see it combined, but as an individual set of Combaticons, this is really what I was after, is this kind of animation look that they've absolutely nailed with all 5 of them. They do look like they've kind of jumped off the screen in many ways. I mean, again, it's not 100% perfect, there are differences, but certainly that animation look, on the whole, I think they've really kind of, you know, they've got it. And again, I think there's no better example of that than Probus versus Brawl's animation model. They've just done a superb job. I think the colours overall on this set are great. I think the design, generally speaking, it can be a bit busy in places and there are some quirks on things like Volatus, but overall I think the design is superb. Top-notch set, and I would wholeheartedly recommend it. You know, for anybody that's kind of on the fence. But even if you're just after a couple of the individual crew members, you know, like Probus, it's definitely worth it, I would say. That's my personal opinion. And then as one final comparison, it's worth taking a look at him versus some of the other third-party brawls on the market. So you've got Unique Toys over here, and then this is Zeta Toys as well, and all quite different, it's fair to say. Really interesting to see all 3 of them lined up together. I mean, fundamentally what you have here is 3 very different interpretations of the same character. They all kind of hit the same or similar beats. I mean, as I sort of joked about earlier, you know, they've all got the cannon on the back, for example, you know, stuff like that. And the similar shape and everything else. Zeta is definitely the most stylized of the 3 and takes a lot of liberties with the animation model. Actually, I say that this is probably the closest to the animation that any of the Zeta guys gets, apart from their Onslaught, which is actually not too bad in that regard. But the others, like Blastoff and Vortex, are really very heavily stylized indeed. This is the more cartoon accurate set in terms of colours anyway that they produced, although I've never been a fan of this weird brown that they went with for their Brawl. I just think it's ugly, to be honest. I mean, even objectively, you know, not even comparing it to you know, the colour it should be based on the cartoon, I just think that is not a very nice colour for this toy, personally speaking. And it is overly stylized as well, definitely. Then you've got the Unique Toys set, which is an interesting one because, if I'm honest, certainly up until I saw pictures of this guy, I was extraordinarily happy with it. Really, really happy. I you know, have raved about this toy in the past and did a review of it on my blog, you know, a few years back whenever it first came out. And really like it. I do really, really like it in many, many ways. I think it's a solid toy. And you know, there's a lot to say about it, and actually for what it is, I think it does a great job at representing the character as well. It's only really when you see then what Ocular Max have done with Probus that you start to look back and think, wow, actually you know, there's quite a lot more going on with this guy that I really enjoy, that sort of puts the Unique Toys effort in the shade, if anything. And that's not to take away from him, because this is still a really fun toy to transform, fun toy to play with. But I do think Ocular Max have definitely, you know, they've definitely won this round, without doubt. I think I've been saying that on every one of these comparisons. This three-way comparison we've done for all of this, all members of the Combaticon team so far, and I think pretty much it's been the same conclusion all round, that Ocular Max have pretty much crushed every example that you can think of. I don't think it's ever been quite as true as it has with this lot, to be honest, because I'm just completely bowled over with Probus. Interesting to see the colour differences. I mean, I've already mentioned this guy and this kind of weird brown that he's got going on. This guy's very muted by comparison, whereas I do like the much more vibrant green that you get on Probus. Never understood why Unique Toys chose to, I don't know, almost dial down the saturation of their set. It's true also on their Swindle, particularly true on their Blastoff. You know, and you can see it here. I mean, it's just really weird that they kind of like designed the figures, decided on the colours, and then it's almost like they went, oh no, that's too exciting. Let's just take it down a notch, make them a bit more grayscale. And to its credit, I think again it just makes Probus stand out more. And size-wise, I really like that he's so big here as well, because that's just kind of how I think of the character. So look, make of it what you will. Ultimately, you know, there are positives to all of them. As I say, I still really like this guy. This set for me spends most of its time in combined mode, if I'm completely honest, and there I do think it really shines. So that was ultimately why I went in on the Zeta set, was for that impressive combined mode. And you know, can't take anything away from that. I think for me, for a standalone Brawl, it's going to have to be Ocular Max, no question. Right, well, we're nearing the end, and I've already gushed on about this guy enough, but we are going to check out the leg mode as well, because I think it'll be really interesting to see. Looking at the instructions, it seems like the majority of it is just literally turning him back to a tank. But we'll give it a go anyway and see how we get on. And here he is in his leg mode. And yeah, the transformation wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad. Slightly annoying only on account of the instructions. I'm going to say this, the instructions on this set have begun to annoy me slightly, just for the fact that they seemingly miss out various little steps here or there that, if they were included, would just make the whole process a lot easier. I mean, the obvious thing here is that they first tell you to reverse to tank mode before transforming to leg mode, and that's fine. I mean, that is generally the case, but then there are quite a few steps that you end up then redoing, you know, such as the arms. You get it all tabbed in for tank mode. It's not difficult, so it's not a big deal, but then you need to split them again for back to leg mode, you know. So it's just little things like that you're like, okay, and now I'm redoing it again. Not a big deal, but I guess what they've done is they've made space in the instructions to account for you then needing to assemble the full combined mode, so they've included instructions for that in its place, I guess, and that's okay. What is annoying is that they don't mention stuff like these little panels here, which are actually really clever. I did clock them in the robot mode and thought, okay, they don't seem to come into play, but you know, presumably they're for the combined mode, and indeed they are, because they hide the hands just on the inside here. What they don't tell you in the instructions, which is really important, is that you need to actually swivel the hands just by 90 degrees in order to allow for these panels to collapse. So of course you discover that as you're going through the motions, at which point then you need to, you know, unpeg all of the arm assembly again, and then turn them and then reattach it all. And look, I'm nitpicking, it's not a big deal, but you know, it's just little touches like that that are slightly frustrating in instructions when they're not included, and then, you know, you end up having to redo it. But hey, I'm grumbling now, and I don't need to, because really it's a very smooth process, and the end result looks nice. I mean, it's a leg. You know, still it's a very neat and tidy leg overall. I mean, in case I've not made enough of it in these reviews, of course it's an all-in-one transformation, so stuff like the feet, in this case anyway, all integrated, as you probably saw. So there is no extraneous, you know, parts forming, anything like that. All in one, and indeed it does live up to that promise. I guess the trade-off for that is that the foot does look a little bit on the small side. It's only fair to say. You know, this is quite a sizable shin. Old Brawl is pretty chunky, and then you've kind of got this tiny little foot just underneath. But there is, you know, ankle tilt there. It's quite tight on this one. Oof, as you can probably see, but I guess that's a good thing, and that if anything, that, you know, bodes well for the combined mode, which we'll take a look at, as I say, in another video. But yeah, it cleans up pretty nicely. It looks good. Now, as with Fraudo, in his leg mode, there is a bit of weapon storage as well. So this cannon piece just tabs onto that little section there. I just had to go at it, and oof, it takes a bit of force. Otherwise it's going to fall off, but once you get it in place it's pretty secure actually, and doesn't look too bad. I mean, it hides away fairly nicely. This is the back of the leg, of course, so it's out of sight. Then of course by rights you should really place these little antennae back on the front there. I probably wouldn't. I would probably leave them off because I think it looks a bit cleaner, but they do still show it in the instructions, to be fair. They're obviously intended to be left in place. And then if you really want to, you could even store the hand blaster, the rifle, rather, on the front there as well. I mean, if you're absolutely obsessed with the idea of everything fitting onto this leg mode, and you know, it would be the same for the other four in this set as well, you know, making sure all their weapons are stored away somewhere, then you can do that. They do all peg or tab in somewhere. And of course the end result is that this is a fairly sizable old thing. It certainly feels big and chunky, and I absolutely cannot wait to see it combined with the other four lads in this set. And I've mentioned it a few times, but of course we'll do that in another video. We'll get them all transformed up, all assembled into big man mode, and check it out then. But for today, it's nice to see this foot at least, and of course it sizes up quite nicely versus the likes of MP45 Bumblebee just there. For today though, there really is a lot to love about this toy, and you know, I'm sure I've gushed about it already quite enough, but honestly, it's superb. You know what, the vehicle mode is, I'm going to say it again, one of the best third-party Masterpiece tank formers I've certainly seen. The robot mode is spot on. It brings to life the character in a way that actually outclasses the rest of this set. Honestly, it's just brilliant. And the leg mode looks cool as well, and the transformation is surprisingly simple between all of the modes. So, you know what? What's not to like? Go buy this thing because it's superb. It's a toot. So that's Ocular Max Probus, meaning that we're finally done with this team, right? Oh wait! Actual chills. So yes, join me for next time when we'll be assembling the full crew and turning them into their big man Assaultus mode, as well as doing some comparisons with the other third-party Bruticus options on the market. Cannot wait. For today, I'll put a link to TF listing for Probus in the video description, and I'll be aiming to get a photo review up on their blog ASAP. Thanks again for watching, and if you haven't yet, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and maybe drop me a like if you enjoyed today's video. Big shout out to all my Patreon supporters too, details of which are coming up at the end of the video. Otherwise, that's it from me, so enjoy the rest of your day. TTFN.